I would like to introduce a woman, a mom, a wife, a friend, someone whose inner strength has been unfairly tested. She and her family have been through the unimaginable. But she knows how important it is to keep imagining a world with a cure for pediatric brain cancer. She is part of our fight for a cure so other families do not go through the pain that she and her family still experience. Please welcome, with your open hearts, Shannon Cox.
Good evening. My son Carson died of pediatric brain cancer. Tonight I'm here to share our family's experience and tell our story. It's only been 2 years, and this is the first time I've ever spoken publicly about our experience, so you'll have to bear with me. But I'm speaking tonight in the hope that as a result of the research being funded by Ian's Friends Foundation, other children and other families will have a story with a better ending. In the summer of 2012, Carson had just finished 4th grade. I know I'm his mother and I'm incredibly biased, but he was an awesome, awesome kid. He was smart and he was funny and he was crazy, crazy competitive. For a 10-year-old, Carson was quite the Renaissance man, or boy. His interests were widely diverse. He loved hunting, and he loved fishing, and he loved eating at really expensive restaurants. And he loved Elvis Presley. Carson also loved sports. He played soccer and football and basketball and ran track and swam on our neighborhood swim team in the summer. That year, he'd just tried out for and made a travel lacrosse team where he played goalie, and he was thrilled. So it was shaping up to be a great summer. Then one evening, our family was sitting around playing cards, and I noticed Carson's hand trembling as he held the cards. It was kind of odd, but I didn't think very much of it. He'd been outside all day playing lacrosse in the hot Atlanta summer. So I thought he was probably just dehydrated, and I made him drink a big glass of water. But we noticed the hand tremor again on some more occasions over the next couple of weeks. And so I scheduled an appointment with our pediatrician, and she ordered an MRI on the Saturday before school was going to start. And that Sunday, we got a call telling us the MRI results were abnormal and that Carson needed to be admitted to the hospital immediately. So instead of starting 5th grade, Carson spent a week in the hospital, undergoing a battery of tests and being seen by a variety of specialists. His symptoms and his MRI results just didn't fit into any specific pattern. The idea of a brain tumor was raised and considered, but the doctors didn't think it was as likely as some of the other options. And I remember being really relieved when they said that. Carson was discharged from the hospital with no definitive diagnosis. And so he started 5th grade a week late, but with all of his normal enthusiasm. Over the next couple of months, we were in and out of various doctors' offices searching for answers. Carson began having problems with balance and coordination, and over Thanksgiving, his symptoms got worse. So the doctors recommended a brain biopsy. And that biopsy confirmed that it was cancer. The news we were given when we met with the oncologist floored us. We were told that Carson had something called gliomatosis cerebri, which is very rare. It's different from other forms of brain cancer because the malignant cells don't form a solid clump or a tumor. Instead, they form threads that spread out and infiltrate the brain tissue. That's why it had taken us so long to get a diagnosis. There was no typical traditional tumor to show up on the MRI. One analogy they used when they were explaining it to us was that it was like a spider web spread across Carson's brain. And because of that, it was completely inoperable. Not only was it inoperable, there were no good treatment options. There was no cure. During that first meeting, the doctor told us that gliomatosis cerebri was invariably fatal. She used those exact words, invariably fatal. They gave us a copy of a medical journal article that they said provided the best summary of Carson's disease. And I need to focus on this article for a minute because it illustrates so painfully the need for research and the importance of the work being done by Ian's Friends Foundation. First, the article reinforced what we'd already been told. The disease was fatal. Treatment could buy a little extra time, but no child lived more than a couple of years after diagnosis. But most important is that the article had been published in 2006, and Carson's diagnosis was in 2012, more than 6 years later. My first response was anger. I couldn't understand why I had been given such old, outdated information. Every day on the news, it seems like you hear about some kind of medical breakthrough. So I was convinced that somewhere out there was updated information with better treatment options. Now, I'm an attorney, not a doctor, but one thing I learned in law school was how to do research. And so I took all of my research skills and I poured them into looking for better treatment options. And I found nothing. There had been no new drugs, no new treatments, nothing that worked. Nothing had changed in the 6 years since that article had been published. We were in touch with pediatric hospitals around the country to see what they had to offer. And again, the answer was nothing. There was nothing at St. Jude's, nothing at Memorial Sloan Kettering, nothing at Duke. And that was even more infuriating, the fact that no progress had been made. There are no words. There are no words to describe the aftermath of being told that your child has brain cancer and that there is no cure. I remember sitting there sobbing, trying to process the news. My son, my Carson, was going to die. You hear about things and you read about things like that, but you never think it can happen to you. But it can. After a lot of tears, my husband and I made 2 resolutions. We were going to make the most of whatever time Carson had left. And second, we were going to fight. We felt compelled to fight, even though we knew we were going to lose. A dear friend who listened as I worked on this speech suggested that I call it fighting the noble fight. But there was nothing noble about it. There is nothing, absolutely nothing noble about watching your child be ravaged by brain cancer. We weren't being noble. We were desperate. We had no choice but to fight against all the odds because Carson deserved a chance. So we worked with doctors at various hospitals to cobble together a treatment plan using radiation and various different chemotherapy drugs. None of these treatments was very effective on their own, but the plan was to use them in combination to increase the effectiveness. And that held off the cancer for a while, and we lived as fully as possible during that time. We got to travel as a family. We went to Australia and to Hawaii. Carson finished 5th grade. He missed a lot of school, but he went on the class trip, and he went to the 5th grade dance, and he graduated with his class. And Carson got to spend time with his friends, going to watch them play in their sporting events, even though he could no longer play himself. Or just hanging out with them at our house, playing video games. All these boys, they were only 10 or 11, maybe 12 at the time. They displayed friendship and honor and a depth of character that was truly remarkable. Through all of his treatments, Carson maintained his quirky sense of humor. He knew his hair was going to fall out because of his treatments, and we had an appointment scheduled at Duke. So he asked to dye his hair blue, and more specifically, Duke blue. So we went up to that appointment with Duke blue hair, much to the entertainment of the staff up there. When we went to Pittsburgh to participate in an imaging study there, Carson, who was a born and bred Dallas Cowboys fan, insisted on wearing a Dallas Cowboy jersey every single day he spent in Pittsburgh Steelers territory. Toward the end of the summer of 2013, Carson's symptoms were getting worse. We heard of a clinical trial that had had some promising preliminary results. To be eligible, Carson had to test positive for a certain antigen. So they drew blood and sent it off for testing, and he wasn't eligible. There are some parts of Carson's illness that are just a blur, that I've blocked out. But I remember this call from the oncologist with perfect clarity. I recall her trying to calm me down with those kind of well-intentioned phrases that people use at times like that. And she said something like, "This just means it wasn't the right trial for him, and you just have to wait for the right trial to come along." And I screamed at her. I screamed, "Like what? Like what?" And the conversation stopped for a while, because we both knew the answer. There wasn't anything. So we kept on tweaking the makeshift treatment plan, and eventually we did find another clinical trial. And we spent several months going back and forth to Cincinnati to try out a new drug. And it didn't work either. Over time, Carson's symptoms got worse, left him unable to walk, and then unable to talk. And finally, in July of 2014, he slipped away. And I miss him. We all miss him every day. We lost our fight. We lost. And it's hard standing up here talking about it. But we ask ourselves, what do you owe the next child? What do you owe the next family? Because that's the reality. There is going to be a next child. Some other mother is going to notice a hand tremor or some other minor symptom, and some other family is going to get launched into the same nightmare we did. It's going to keep happening, and it's going to keep turning out the same way unless something changes. But with the research being funded by Ian's Friends Foundation, there is the hope that other children will have better options and better outcomes. And that's why we agreed to share our story here tonight. We're so grateful to Cheryl and Phil for the work they've started with Ian's Friends Foundation and for their commitment to continue the fight until there's a cure. And by being here tonight and by contributing to Ian's Friends, all of you all here have joined us in that fight, the fight that's going to continue until there's a cure.